and welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. It's great to have you all here. You're all welcome. I would just like to ask a couple of attendees that we have tonight to introduce our president-elect, Louise Hoskins, and our former president, Craig Foyle, to unmute and come on and say a few words before we start the presentation. Great to have you here. Louise, if you're there, could you make yourself known?
Yes, of course I'm here, Brendan. I feel like I've seen a few of you a few times this week. So yeah, no, I thought I'd just it's nice to pop in to different branches. It's good to see Craig. How you doing, Craig?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
So no, thank you so much for giving me a bit of a quick slot here today. So we've all had a bit of a busy week, I think, and we've had a good chairs day, so I'm sure you guys are going to be discussing that as well. But I just wanted to grab this moment to let everybody know that the presidential team have introduced a new award. So many of you will know about the PDSA, which is the President's Distinguished Service Award. But Jimmy and I, and actually Craig kind of started this off, because I remember when I was a vice president under Craig, we were talking about the award system, and Jimmy, myself, and I know Craig feels the same way as well. We really wanted to recognise the amazing, incredible work that every single one of you do, and particularly our volunteers. And we always felt, I mean, just to give you a little bit of background, when people apply for an award, the president-elect, the president and the immediate past president, we kind of create this little panel and we look at the awards that are coming in and make a decision. But we often felt that there were lots of people that we wanted to recognise in terms of the award. And that it wasn't a PDSA, but we really wanted to recognise the amazing work that volunteers do within our branches, and particularly those volunteers that have been serving for a long time. So there's a number of different ways that you can go about looking at these, and do go to the presidential team page of our website, and you can have a look at how all of these awards work. And if basically you fill in a form, work with Brenton as your regional manager, and send that through to Sunita. And I'm conscious that there are people from other branches on here, so do have a look at that. And Kurt, you're moonlighting, you're in Chiltern branch and you're here tonight, so I have spotted you. so yeah, everybody does some amazing work. Now, part of the reason why I'm here, and part of the reason why Craig is here, is because we're going to actually award the very first President's Commendation Award tonight, and that is going to go to not only a member of your committee, but your chair, Alan Dunn.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. First time I've been speechless, Louise.
Lovely. So, Alan, it's an absolute honour and a pleasure for me to be here on behalf of Jimmy tonight. He couldn't be here today, so I'm here. So it's an absolute pleasure for me to award you with this President's Commendation Award. Alan, you've been at the branch for 14 years. We know that you work tirelessly across the branch. You've had some great speakers. You've supported countless members with their CPD, IPD. You've co-hosted sessions. You've got people through fellowship interviews, peer reviews, interviews, held a number of mentoring sessions. So we know how hard you've worked. So thank you for everything that you've done. You've been nominated by Craig Boyle and Angela Hayden, and in their words, and I'm going to let them speak in a second. You're a true credit to the institution. You're supportive, dedicated, and a true advocate for everything that IOSH stands for. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Louise, can I just say you've got me on 2 accounts, one being speechless and the other the first time I've been embarrassed in my life.
So you're gonna receive your awards in the post, but I'm gonna see. I was quite glad when Jimmy couldn't do this because I was looking forward to it so much. But yeah, I'm gonna hand over to congratulations from myself and the rest of the Prestige team. But I'm gonna hand over to Craig, who's gonna say a few words.
Thank you very much.
So hello, Alan. You probably find this is strange that I've nominated you and I've never actually formally met you in person, but there's a reason why. I talk a lot with the professional development team, and in doing so and asking questions and looking at other things, your name kept popping up all over the place. And I'm like, who is this Alan Dunn? So I started making inquiries, and it was one of my favorite things when I was president, being able to talk to members and just see some of the great things that we've done. And you've done that much, I might got to refer to my notes on the side here. So I know that you're branch chair and you've been a leader and a mentor, but when I started looking at the CPD and the IPD work that you've done, that really got me interested. But then I started looking at the panels that you get involved with. So you've, like Louise said, you've co-hosted some of the panels and get people to try and go towards fellowship. Collaborated with Caribbean branch, fantastic. But the PRI, so we actually were trying to spring this on you at your last meeting, and you didn't come. So,
no.
But weirdly, on that day, I was doing chartered member interview panel, and so it was like an extension to my day. And I thought that's lovely. And then today, I've been doing chartered fellow interviews. So how timely it is that it's you. But my statistics are nothing like yours. So 68 fellowship interviews. You've been a chair for 33 since April 2018, so nearly 50% of all of those that were done. And portfolio reviewer, you spend about 3 hours on every one. You've done over 31 portfolios, so over 90 hours reviewing portfolios. And as a fellowship interviewer today, those portfolio reviews are invaluable for us to look at. Not only your comments, but then it helps us with our question sets and with how we work. So it makes it so much better. And then 148 chartered member interviews. Honestly, the list goes on. But again, mentoring as well. So I did cheat. I did liaise with Coco a lot as well, and Coco's on this call, so she is watching you to get this. But this just shows you, Alan, how much you are appreciated by the membership,
nice.
And how much you're appreciated by the presidential team and the past presidents like myself, but also how much you're appreciated from the IOSH staff as well. And it's really nice to see somebody that is positively spoken of by all different factions. And so for that, the minute I found all that out, I said, we've got to apply for something for you. And I'm so surprised that you didn't know even when Louise started talking about it, which made it even better. But to be honest, that supports all the feedback that I got about you, and so I'm so proud to be honoured to meet you for the first time and say you are the reason why I do what I do. And so I've looked up to people like you all the way through my career as I was going through, and I will continue to do so. And I think you've got a record there that I'll never be able to beat in terms of number of panels. So I will not be breaking your records anytime soon.
Thank you very much. They're lovely, kind words. Thank you very much, Craig. Much appreciated.
No, it's all deserved. Now, we did try and get to Angela on, but I'm not sure if she's on the call. So if not, then she will catch up with you at another date, because she was your seconder for this as well. So she has full knowledge and understanding of what you're going to be getting. So congratulations again from me.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Alan, would you like to say a few words?
Well, yeah, I would. I mean, thank you. isn't big enough. I mean, I've loved what I've done in all the different aspects. I love giving back. I've been part and parcel of a lot of the processes, as you know, and that's been brought out. And as a fellow, part of that for me was always continuing to give something back, both to IOSH and I do still in my local community with regards to health and safety and the development of it. And it's great to be part of the organisation. And never in my wildest dreams would I have guessed that this was going to happen tonight or any time in my lifetime. So I'm hoping I've got a few more years left in me to hopefully to do some good at IOSH and for the branch. And I'm lost for words. You can see that. Sorry,
Love it when a plan comes together.
You've got me.
Thanks, Louise, and thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Alan, can I hand over to you now to get the proceedings underway?
I've got a dash, but have a really fantastic meeting, guys. And I'm so thrilled that we managed to surprise you, Alan. And
you did.
Thank you for everything.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Craig.
I have to go as well, but
have a great evening.
Congratulations, Alan, and I will catch up with you. I will catch up with you separately as well. Okay.
Bye.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Alan, over to you.
Over to me. Thank you very much, Brenton. Thanks for that. Right. All I will say is thanks again to IOSH and receiving this award. Great. And it's something that I will treasure. But anyway, what I will say is good evening, ladies and gentlemen, friends and visitors, as you know. It's great to have you attend our meeting at the East Midlands again tonight. And we've got a great speaker in Hugh Maxwell, speaking about international safety. So I'm sure there'll be some interesting snippets there that we can all take back, which we'll look forward to. Just a little bit of housekeeping, if I can, first. Can I please ask that you keep your mics on silent, just so that it helps us all, for no disturbance, if you like, particularly for the speaker. Please use the chat function for posting your questions on. And with that, if you could prefix it with a capital Q, it just makes it easier for the delivery team to pick up and get your questions asked at the end of the session. On that note, I would like to say a special thank you to Colin Jenkinson, because he's took the lead. He's organised the speaker for tonight and put all the work in behind the scenes for arranging Hugh to deliver on this tonight. So without any further ado, I'd like just to hand over to Hugh and he'll tell us a little bit about himself and then lead us into the presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Alan, and congratulations. Sincerely, mate. You truly deserve it. You really represent everything that's good about IOSH.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Number one, excellent. How do I follow that? How do I follow that, guys? Please tell me. No, I'll do my best. Thanks for this opportunity to the management team of the East Midlands branch, but also to all the members who are attending. My name's Hugh Maxwell, and I'm also a fellow of IOSH. I've been a fellow since 2008, but I've been involved in the IOSH since the early 1990s, and it's been a big part of my life. I've not been so active in the branches, and part of the reason for that has been my role has initially grown within Europe, and after that grown much more internationally. So what I'd like to share with you tonight is an insight into really where I've been, what I've done, and share some of the experience, not specifically safety facing, but some of the things that come along as challenges that you don't always expect to be a challenge, but also give you all the opportunity to ask any questions you'd like. I have worked in over 80 countries around the world, primarily in manufacturing and supporting the steel and foundry industry. So I'll share a few of those, and if you've got any specific questions along the way, I said please share them through the means that Alan said, so we can actually give you as much value out of this tonight as you like. Now, we'll be sharing my screen. I will be sharing a few slides, but I assure you it's not going to be death by PowerPoint. Just really things to prompt me in my old age. So, as I said to you, I've been quite actively involved with IOSH. I still mentor and get a lot back out of it. I like to think of it as mentor partnerships rather than actually a mentor-mentee relationships. I think we learn so much from each other and gain so much from these relationships. I do apologise. Max said hello. That's my border collie. I'll try and keep him quiet as long as no one's come to the door. But it's very much a case that over the years that I've grown and matured, a lot of what's actually influenced my approach and the way I manage safety, both internationally and with individuals, have been the experiences of the different courses I've seen around the world. and the different learning experiences. I can honestly say, every trip I've been on, I've always learned something. We never, well, I think the longer we get involved and the deeper we get involved, we realise the less we actually know, and the more there is for us to learn from others, and in particular in terms of other cultures when it comes from third world or developing countries as people see these things as. Because ultimately, sometimes the most precious thing they have over there is life, but sometimes in terms of employment, in terms of risks that are taken in the workplace, life is too cheap as well. So I've been always a strong adversary to try and push to try and get safety as close to the sharp end as possible, raise people's awareness, which can be quite challenging sometimes, particularly if you've got people who are illiterate, or for example, like in India, where they've got something like 30 to 40 main languages. So sometimes trying to get the message across in the way they want it can be the biggest challenge of all, because what our expectations are and what they interpret it as is not always the same. So, my friends, if I can move on, I don't know if, yeah. So, as I said, I've been HT and risk professional over 20 years. I started my career with a company called Foseco, specialising in manufacturing consumables for the foundry and steel industry. Then, for 10 years, we were part of the Burma Castrol Specialty Chemicals division. And from 2008 to 2017, I worked for a company called Vesuvius, who were the world's leaders in terms of supplying consumables to the steel industry. I left that company in December 2017, took 8 months out while my wife recovered from a major illness. Fortunately, everything went right, but I'd still got a lot of ambition and a lot of energy that I wanted to share and use. So I joined a company called ESAB. ESAB are part of the Colfax Group, and they're the world leaders in cutting and welding technologies. So I spent 18 months or so with them, developing and sharing a sustainability strategy in a global environmental lead, which is also something close to my heart. And around November, December 2019, I was approached by Chubb Global Risk Advisors, formerly known as ESIS, because they wanted to try and share my skills and develop a stronger bonding with their customer base in Europe, Middle East and Africa. So in February 2020, I joined Chubb in the new role as Senior HSE Consultant, providing services where we can in terms of occupational health monitoring, ergonomics, machine guarding, and also in some cases auditing for a lot of our major customers. Chubb being the biggest, second biggest insurer in the world, I believe. And with COVID coming along, I thought I'm going to be one of the first people out of the door. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. They redefined my job and my role, and I was fortunate enough to be able to call on a lot of my international contacts and become more of a project manager, doing much more remote work. However, prior to this, unbeknown to me, I've been nominated for the IRSM Risk Excellence Award for Best International Risk Initiative for a thing called Safety Breakthrough, which is basically about global engagement and sharing best practices within our business. We had when I started my job in Vesuvius in April 2008, on the first day of my job, I was told that one of our guys had lost their hand cleaning a mixer in Brazil, which is not the best start to any global HSE director role. So immediately we did a total review of the safety aspects of what these mixers, Allentown mixers, and tried to make sure that we had a consistent basis of safety in terms of guarding, in terms of cutouts, so that we didn't get a second or a repeat accident anywhere. And lo and behold, I thought things can't get much worse than this. 4 days later, sadly they did. I had a phone call at 6:45 in the morning from a guy who was reporting to me, had never met me, to tell me that one of our guys had been killed working in the steel plant in Teesside. So my first official duty was actually to go and engage with our people, with the police, with the factory inspector. Fortunately, we had professional counsellors who dealt with the family and everything, but just seeing our people go through that, it was something I never wanted to repeat again. So that helped us launch Safety Breakthrough through Excellence, management buy-in all the way, and we ran that globally, and then we shared it with our customer base as well in the steel industry globally. And as I said, I was totally amazed when I got the award. It wasn't my award, it was the award of the team who'd been able to make these things happen working with me. But ultimately, I've always been a big believer in mentoring and coaching. And I've always continued this both within work, within IOS, within IRSM, and really anybody who around the world. And even now, I'm coaching and mentoring a lot of people. I think Nermin's on. Nermin, one of my mentoring partners, is on here from Turkey with us tonight. A few other people from India I'm still strongly involved in. I have a massive love for it. So I'm still coaching and mentoring, and I was fortunate to be nominated for the RSM First Award for Mentor of the Year, which was really humbling as well. And I'm really, really pleased to see Alan get the recognition tonight, because it's not something that you look for, something you expect, but it makes you sit back and reflect and think, well, hang on a minute, hey, us old dogs have got something to offer still, mate. We're okay. And that's no disrespect to you, my friend. I'm sorry, but no, I've known Alan a long time. I've interacted with Alan for a lot of years, and it's really good, and it makes me feel so perked up to see that people are getting this recognition now, particularly through Irish. I've got a strong love for Irish, got a strong love for the RSM. I'm actually part of the fellowship panel. I chair the fellowship panel for RSM, and obviously going forward, as well as mentoring, if I am based more at home, I want to try and encourage and engage as many of the Irish members to fulfil their full potential as well. My son's just recently taken his NEBOSH certificate. He's moving into the dark side. He's moving into safety with us as well. So hopefully he'll put me right where I'm going wrong. So I'm sure he will, because he's quite keen, and he's very keen and motivated. And I think what I'm seeing nowadays, what I really do like is, particularly with some of the initiatives for the young emerging leaders and things, this new infusion of energy is making people like Alan and myself realise just how important it is to share and engage. And I think it's revitalised us in our approaches. And as we said earlier, we really do learn this stuff. So that's enough about me and enough about the background. What I'd like to share with you now really is a bit about some of the experiences I had. I've worked from January 1987 for Foseco. My first trip outside of Europe, I worked within Europe really from the early 1990s, Germany, Sweden, France, Italy, Spain, Turkey. Turkey was developing, in Poland. So in some respects, it was a closer community than you'd first come to. But the first time I really recognised the real importance of different cultures, and really the importance of intercultural awareness, was my first visit to India, which was in March 2005. And the places I visited were Chennai, Pondicherry, which is an old French colony, which is down in Tamil Nadu in the south of India, and Pune, which is about a 30-minute flight or about a 5-hour drive from Mumbai. Beautiful places, all of them in their own right, beautiful people. But I arrived into the airport, which is a military base, early hours of the morning, expecting to sort of meet and greet somebody. I wasn't. And while I was there, when I arrived, my bag was still in London at Heathrow. So it was about 26 degrees. It was about 26 degrees cool at that time of year in Chennai. It got much warmer as the day got on. And there I was wearing the same set of clothes. Unfortunately, BA at the time supplied you with the toothbrush and the extras, because being quite naive to this type of long haul travel, you don't realise, you take everything for granted, the bag's going to turn up. So the first thing, if you are going to travel long haul like that, don't forget your toothbrush and ensure that you've got a spare set of clothes, because sometimes you do need them. About 3 or 4 times I've actually not had any equipment and gear with me. And if you are taking test equipment, sometimes, particularly if you're doing occupational health work, try and keep whatever you can with you on your person. I've also had situations where things have been stolen or things have been damaged in transit. So if you've got any sensitive meters, noise meters, things like this, you can carry them on your person or on your personal effects. Try to do so. So when you get there, you can deliver the work you want. In this case in India, it was quite remarkable, because the guy wanted me at the airport. It was a military airport at the time. They wanted to make a list of what items I hadn't actually had delivered with me, and they wanted to charge me £300 or something like this to bring them into the country, which I strongly objected to. I got quite angry about it, which didn't get us anywhere. It just gave me a 90-minute stay in the airport, which I didn't really need. So read up on what you're going on, learn a bit about where you're going before you go. And I got to a hotel in Chennai, had a few hours sleep before I moved down the old coast road where the tsunami had hit, which is down from Chennai down to Pondicherry. It took about 5 or 6 hours down there, and I actually experienced the real devastation of what the tsunami had done firsthand. And the people were resilient. They'd fortified around, that houses were destroyed, the livelihoods had been destroyed, but this was like 3 months after, and they were carrying on business as usual. Much more resilient than we've probably been through COVID. So it was a big learning place to me, that just how resilient these people are. But I will admit, I got to the hotel, and the first thing I did at the hotel was I took a drink of water. Now, I've been told, obviously, only drink bottled water, make sure the bottles are sealed as such. Unfortunately, when you're thirsty and when you're stressed, you don't always let common sense kick in. So I took a good swig of this water, probably about half a pint of it. Unfortunately, after the 5-hour drive, I arrived at the airport and I was extremely ill. I was sick and much worse. Fortunately, I was in my hotel room. They got me a doctor, they got me some Imodium sorted so I could actually deal with it before I had to go to work a day or two later. I didn't actually have the emergency contact number of the person. I had the company, being me, thinking, oh, I found the company, it's great. You don't realise that these places, you do really need a local contact. So it's important you have an emergency contact. Try and call in with them before or after. Make sure that you're familiar with them, and make sure that they know you're there and they can support you. I said to you about, it is stressful, particularly the first time, particularly if you're on your own for the first time. And particularly a culture like India and a culture like China, they want to oblige you, they want to please you. But sometimes they don't understand why you're getting ratty, because to them it's acceptable, whatever. For example, a taxi doesn't turn up for an hour, or 3 taxis turn up at the same time. It's an act of God. It happens. They accept this. Whereas we get frustrated, and you soon learn then to try and conform to the norm as the way things are there. And the important thing to remember always, wherever you are, whenever you are, you're not just representing yourself and your family and your company, you're representing your country, and the standards and the impression that you give across sets them into a frame of mind as to how everybody else in your country, your company behave. So it's really important that you don't get irate. And the other thing is as well, and I've seen it regularly, particularly in Spain, and it still happens, a lot of people think that because somebody doesn't speak English as the mother tongue, the more you shout at them, or the more that you actually exaggerate the pronunciation of your words, it's going to make things easier. It's not. Sometimes it's better to get a pen and a piece of paper and just actually write down or draw down. But the important thing I've found, if you can, do a bit of research online beforehand, find out some small key phrases. Can you help? We have hospital, doctors, hotel name as well. I was saying, have these things on you. And again, I thought I was being clever a few years ago in a mobile phone. That's great. Then the mobile phone decides to blow up because it's either too hot or too cold in the conditions you're working in. So sometimes having that paper backup. And also I found as well, I've only ever lost my passport once in all this time. I've been very fortunate. In fact, I tell a lie, I've lost it twice. Dr. Nigel Graham decided to put my passport in his pocket at the airport once. So we had virtually a major security alert at Birmingham Airport trying to find my passport. And then Nigel realised he'd got his on his own, his and mine in his pocket. So make sure you've got a copy, photocopied if you can, because then if anything goes wrong, you can take that to the embassy and get yourself out. So that's really a bit about the importance of doing these things. Now, I mentioned to you about India. I absolutely love India. But one of the biggest shocks that came across in my first experience before working there was driving at night. First thing at night, a lot of the drivers insist on not using lights on their cars. The reason being is that say it saves energy. I would much rather be safe with lights on than save energy with lights off, particularly on some of the roads that these guys and girls have to drive on. And the other no-no in India is you never hit a cow. If you hit a cow, cows are sacred, and the people will react very, very nasty and angrily to that in some parts of India, particularly rural India. And they were telling me that they could see. I said, well, how do you see if there's a cow? We can see the whites of his eyes. I said, well, you've got better eyesight than me, gentlemen. So, and the other thing which was absolutely a fantastic experience, just find out when you're going to India, if it's wedding season, if it's it's an hour to the factory and back, it may well be 3 or 4 hours. Because sometimes you have a whole field that's bare one day, the next day you've got the most amazing, splendid tents, marquees, decorations, and it's basically like a little mini festival there. And a couple of times I've been invited to Indian weddings, I've attended, and once we're actually stuck in the traffic, and one of the guests at the wedding invited me to come out and dance with them all. It was a fantastic experience, lovely people. Another place I went to not long after India was China. China itself was developing at the time, and I was in a village outside of Nanjing, a place called Luhe, which is it's actually got its own local dialect. And I was talking to our taxi driver who could speak some English, asking him to talk to the local hotel guy about my room, my company. And even within China, these two guys didn't understand each other, because one spoke what I would call Nanjing Chinese, which would be like based on Mandarin. The other one spoke Luanese, they call it, which is the local language. So I was there, and another time in China there. The people are very good, but you have to build trust with them, relationships. They have a wicked sense of humour. Again, it's really important to get local phrases, because I wanted to say thank you for a meal one night to a waitress who looked around. She looked no older than 12 or 13. She was probably older. But when I asked the guys, how do I say thank you, that was delicious, they told me, oh, that's very easy. Just say, woe I knee. So there's me, sort of middle-aged man speaking to this young girl. Woe I knee. She ran in the kitchen. I was horrified, mortified. So what did I say? What did you tell me to say? Everybody, not just myself in the room, all Chinese except myself, found it highly amusing that I just told this young lady that I loved her. So be careful who you trust for your phrases, and make sure that you get right phrase yourself. Admittedly, she came out afterwards. The joke was on me, the round eye, the Westerner. And we had difficulty with their language. They had difficulty with our language. I could say it, but not say it well. But my name in China wasn't huge. It wasn't Hugh Maxwell. My name was the Chinese translation for huge mackerel. So that was my Chinese name. And then we gave them English names as well. So it was absolutely amazing. And because we're Westerners and they like to treat us, they're very keen on sharing their local wine with us, which basically is like paint stripper. So if you have to drink this, please tell them you're teetotal, or keep the one glass with you, because they like to gumbe, toast a lot. And this is horrible stuff. It really is. Mao Tai. And the other thing is they like to give you some fantastic food, fantastic meals. I've eaten so many great things. Things, for example, like jellyfish, snakes, snake's blood. They call them 100-year-old eggs, which are basically old, rotten, fermented eggs. And they expect you as a guest to take these and eat these and treat you. And the worst one was actually in a place called Wuhan, where I had the pleasure, I wouldn't say I ate it, but I did chew on it for a long time, bull's testicle. So please be careful when you go out there what you eat. And they do like to serve it. It's served absolutely beautiful. The food's so fantastic, presented well. One of my friends was a little upset because they'd actually served the lobster, and the lobster was still moving on the plate because its nerves are gone. I put him off seafood for life, I'll be quite honest with you. Russia, amazing place. It was in Russia, actually, and it was in December 2016. It was 2 days before my birthday. I actually decided I would never want to work in a steel plant again. I was working on the blast furnace, which is typically the hottest part of the steel plant. And on the blast furnace, the temperature was minus 25 degrees Celsius. And they told me it was warm, it wasn't cold yet. We hadn't hit the cold spell yet. And I'm Scottish by birth, so you think there's something, sort of some antifreeze or something in your blood anyway, but not to be able to withstand these temperatures. And I went down to breakfast and I nearly made a mistake by picking the wrong bottle up, because as well as having the sparkling and the still water, there were copious supplies of vodka at the breakfast table. And when I asked them, what the hell are these for? The night shift workers would have what I call a morning cap to help them sleep. And I think, looking at the way some of the guys worked in the steel plant, some of the morning shift workers were having a pre-work snack, nip of it as well, because it was like it was their local way. The only time I'd say I've really had any real problems or any fear were when I was in Mexico and Brazil. At the time I was in Mexico, I was in Monterrey, really from 2007 till about 2000. I mean, I've been before, but Monterrey 2007 to 2013, 14. Lots of problems with the drug cartels. Very heavy military presence. Even on the highways, there'd be truck after truck of military vehicles with lots of guns. Very scary. And one of the hotels we were staying in, there was actually a shootout across the road from it. And we were fortunate we were in the hotel and safe, but it could have gone the other way. So then we put a travel ban on Mexico for a few years. And unfortunately, whilst I was actually working at one of our factories in Brazil, I was actually in the plant. We actually had our own bank on site with security guards. And because it's a poor country in a poor area in Sao Paulo where we're working, somebody had actually come along and actually tried to rob, armed shootout with our security guards. Fortunately, nobody was hurt and they got away with nothing. But, it's really important you're aware of these things. You keep aware. You don't take any chances. Try and be sensible. Don't draw any attention to yourself, and never venture off the beaten track. So important. Try and keep a guide with you, somebody you trust, and somebody you know that if there's something wrong, they'll get you out of there safely and quickly as possible. So, The important things and key learning points I've had out of all this time really are really as simple as this. It's important you keep an open mind as to what you're going to face. Don't criticize. We don't walk in their shoes and we don't know the experiences. It's important you try and see it as a studying, a learning time, a time where you can absorb and get to understand what are the senses, what are the things that make the people function, what are the things that matter to the people that then allow you to try and approach the technical or the safety issues and changes tactfully in the way you actually put the changes across. And as I said, always expect the unexpected. You know, never really, I mean, you have to build a lot of flexibility. And sometimes, for example, in India, a meeting you think would take an hour may take 3 hours. There'll be a lot of deliberation before you get the buy-in and people discussing and debating. It's their way. And we have to accept that their cultures are different. We have to work with them and work within the confines of how they do. And it's always important. Again, one of the key learnings I've found out, always at hotels, even now over here now, first thing to do is make sure that there's a fire exit, you know where the fire exits are, and make sure that the fire exits are unblocked and make sure they're not padlocked up. A couple of times I've had the situation where I've actually left the hotel because it was for their security. They said the fire exit was locked. And I said, well, what about our safety and our welfare? And they refused to change the situation, so I actually moved hotels. To be effective in any of these countries, it's really important to build relationships with the local team. It's really important to integrate, spend time with the people. This engagement allows you to get your acceptance first as a person. And while you're doing this, don't criticize what you see, share your knowledge, share the ideas. Sometimes turn it around to get the idea and draw the idea from them, because then they'll accept you as a professional. And it's from that you create the right platform for them to accept the changes in conceptual practices that you want to build and instill in the business. So it's really important to recognize, if you want to try and gain this trust, you've got to give trust first. It's a two-way thing. You mustn't get mad. You must take it step by step, baby steps, slowly. And if things aren't working out, don't get mad. Sit down, evaluate why. Sometimes it means keeping your cool and trying to talk to the person to see what they didn't understand, why they didn't understand it. Usually the failure of understanding is your failure to put it across in a way. In some cultures, to say it's your failure is much better received because they'll buy into it. Because if they lose face, for example, in Japan and sometimes in China, it demotivates them, they feel they're a failure. So it's important that you earn this respect and build up their respect with them and make them realize that they're a positive contributor. And if you can, try and gain and instill and share more knowledge, then ultimately they will take ownership, and then they will actually start taking the ownership and putting it across in the way that you want them to, that means something to their workforce. So a lot of, depends where you are around the world. In some of our Indian plants, we're absolutely brilliant. The standards of safety were as good as anywhere. We're all at different levels of maturity in terms of safety, in terms of on the safety highway to excellence. So it's important that you try and identify where they are. Obviously, if there are any things that are real showstoppers that are really potentially dangerous, you have to address them immediately. But try and put together a step-by-step plan, which allows them to learn and gain and take this ownership, transfer the ownership so that it's shared ownership, and that you build this trust so that they're prepared to come forward and ask questions. Or if things are going wrong early, you can develop and act by developing some contingency or a plan B. One of the biggest questions to ask, which I've found after you build this trust, is how can we help you? What can I do to make it easier? What can I do to help you, your people, and your business succeed in this area? So sometimes it's allowing them, and using the pregnant pause, keeping that time there, allowing them, or saying, look, go away and think about it, or even leave the room, leave the team to talk about it, because sometimes people don't like to lose face or think they've said the wrong thing. And I'll say to them, there's no wrong thing. I'd really like to share your views. So sometimes you're better to leave them for a day or let them have their own meetings and then get somebody to share it through them, because you get from some cultures, you tend to find they'll open up much more that way. But it's really important that you share and develop your needs and the expectations. Treat it like any project as you would, with milestones, so you can look at step-by-step checkpoints to see how things are going, and you can actually understand truly how well understanding and expectations are being aligned. And what you find is you empower your people more, they grow more, and the trust grows. And it's important you don't see failure as failure, that you brush yourself down, use it as a learning experience, and build on whatever positives you've seen, and then use that to take it forward, whether you're putting a new policy in place, whether you're building a new plant, or whether you're transferring your plant from one place to another. It's so important. Things won't go right all the time because there is misunderstanding, which is why I made it so important that when I was in the global role, I had a regional HSE manager, and then at country level, and for the bigger sites at site level, I had local HSE managers who I worked with to develop, sometimes through myself, sometimes through a local agency, for example, NEBOSH training, OSHA training, something that was meaningful to them in their mother tongue locally wherever possible. So whilst it's important we have group standards, the most important thing I used to say to them, take that group standard, please, develop it and implement it the way that you think will best fit our business. And they'd make this decision, most of them on consensus. They get people from operations, people from purchasing, engineering, other parts of the business to get their view on it. Because sometimes what they were doing already was excellent, but sometimes with massive gaps. So we had to make sure what we're putting into place worked for the business and the nature of that business as well. So very much a case of sharing, very much a case, and I think in some respects, that's where a lot of the actual coaching and mentoring came at first, because of this, the approach you have to have. It's very much a case of working with the people. And as well as having seen the importance of good process safety, of obviously good risk management, understanding good application of meaningful risk assessments, the important thing really is to get to people values and get their buy-in if it's going to be effective and sustainable. So on the back of that, basically, the approach I'd recommend if you do have an international safety role is, with the knowledge and expectations you have, try and develop your local teams through this sharing, through training, coaching and mentoring them to the highest of standards. Again, trying to relate as much as possible to local sources or local references that we know they will react and respond to. And by sharing the knowledge and the experiences that you have, building on earlier successes, not seeing mistakes as mistakes, seen as an opportunity for improvement, you get this greater ownership and a more balanced outcome. So irrespective, even within, with yourself within the UK, we've got different cultures seeing different things and implementing different things differently. It doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It means that they think differently, and we need to allow them and enable them to learn the way that they feel best and most comfortable doing it. So we've got to allow them and trust them to implement things the way that they do, and don't force the Western way. And as I said, I used to treat every meeting, every experience, every day as a learning opportunity to actually gain respect, to give respect, and to recognize that we are all different. And just because we're different doesn't mean that we're wrong. So ultimately, that is really all I have to share with you. If any of you have any questions you'd like to ask now, I've shared my personal details as well. I'll be as open as I can. If you've got technical questions as well, please feel free to ask away. But that's really just to set the scene, to break the ice, and emphasize really, if you want to be effective as a senior leader in these countries, it's important you build that trust. So thank you for this opportunity to share with you.
Thanks very much, Hugh. That was fantastic. It's brought back some memories from my time as well abroad. You've got quite a few questions, so let me just kick off with the first one. So the first one is, based on your experience, how do you ensure your own safety and that of your team when traveling?
Well, we've got quite strong corporate policies. And also, particularly now in Chubb, we can be in an insurance, we're very risk averse. But even in the past, I've always been fortunate. I've worked for companies who are big-minded in terms of protecting their people. We've always had emergency contact numbers. When I first went the first time, I wasn't a regular traveller in 2003, 2004. And we're just in the process of forming a new Faseco PLC. So it was a part of change. After that, we had emergency contact numbers, hotlines, and our insurers actually supplied us with an emergency contact number in each country. And on top of that, we had a checklist and we had information sent to us about the country beforehand when we booked our flights. So we did our homework, or the homework was fed to us. Again, reasonably sized, big sized company, we might not all be in that situation. So that's why it's important that you do your homework, get onto the government websites, as we do now with COVID, to see what the situation and what recommendations the government are making on there, the Home Office pages. Do exactly the same for the countries that you're going to.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. I was just remembering that we had an international organisation that if things got really bad, they would repatriate you. I don't know if you had that insurance.
Yes, we did. Yes, yeah, we had that. Yeah, they were very much. Yeah. To be honest, that's one thing. I was always fortunate to work with companies who very much protect the people first. Yeah. So it's great to work with companies like that. And I think it's probably gone much more that way as well, particularly of recent years with the COVID situation and other things.
Absolutely. Okay, so next question I have here is, do you rate the Napo cartoons? So,
I think they're fantastic.
The HSE cartoons, yeah, for communicating health and safety issues when there is a language barrier.
I think they're fantastic. And the thing is, I said, and I have used the Napo stuff in places like India. I've used it in places like China, where there's either a language barrier. What I like about Napo, it really does relate well in Europe. But a lot of the stuff that Napo covers is equally relevant in terms of best practices. And I'll be quite honest with you, what I've found in different cultures, particularly developing countries, something like Napa, and Napa is much better received than Maxwell standing in front of them 4 hours deaf by PowerPoint. So we can get it across. Yeah, it's a very useful training kit, very useful information to share, small chunks which people learn better with, I believe. A little information regularly is much better than overkill. So yeah, that, and there are other things out there as well within some of the countries as well. For example, I spent a bit of time out in Korea as well, did a lot of work out there in the Dingshan steel plant, Hyundai Steel. And there are similar aids out that have been developed out there which are equally strong and powerful for the workforce.
That's great. Okay, so next question, and this is about the legislation. How has the variance, or how have the variances in legislation and safety cultures affected your experience in getting the buy-in of whoever you're dealing with? I think that means.
Well, no, but yeah, I understand. Yeah, well, for example, we're quite fortunate that we've led the way in a lot of things, particularly, for example, I'll talk about India, but the Factories Act in India was very much based on what we had in place in the UK legislation before India gained independence. And they have also always tried to, well, more recently, they've focused much more on a risk-based approach than originally they did. So I've tended to try to familiarise myself with the local stuff, made it easier in Europe first, obviously with the six-pack and the way we were sort of the EU, the EU combination, and there are still differences in different places, Turkey, Poland, for example, for age reporting. We still have different changes in workplace exposure limits and things, but it has made it much easier. But the important thing is as well to try and find an information source or somebody competent in that country. Many of the places I've been visiting have been developing countries, and they've been they've been very keen to embrace these best practices. And I think partly because the fact you build the relationship, and I think as time has gone on in this time, I've definitely seen a change in terms of even the smaller companies in places like China. They realise just how important life is and safety and welfare at work is. I was talking to a Chinese lady online earlier, and she has her own clothing company through LinkedIn, and she was telling me it's a Dragon Boat Festival next week, and what she's done for her employees, she's actually got them they've got them a wonderful fruit. I think it's a dragon fruit they call it. She's got these in a gift box, a big red gift box, as red as the colour of giving gifts. And as well as having an extra week's holiday, 8 weeks holiday pay, she's also given 100 renminbi for each employee. Now, 10 years ago in China, that wouldn't have happened, I'm sure. Because it was much less of a sort of employee welfare environment. But particular places I've been impressed with in terms of changes in law, I found the rate of change of laws in China was phenomenal. I found the rate of change of particularly environmental laws in Brazil in the past few years really, really picked it up. So really, they were quite glad that we'd actually set high standards and high bars already, because it enabled them to actually cope with the changes in any legislation.
That's great. Well, fantastic answer, I think, Hugh. I've got one now from, this one's from, I'm not so sure if it says Scott Middleton.
I know that guy is trouble, my friend. He's a close friend of mine, Scott. He's a good guy.
Okay, so here's his question. I think he came in a bit late. How would one go about trying to step into a global-based role if they have been permanently based in a public sector UK role for their full working life, 18 years in brackets? Apologies if this has already been covered, as I missed.
No.
I don't think it has been covered yet, has it? No.
I think that's a good move. I think you've got to really look at what skill set you have at the moment. What have you got? I mean, you've got to actually obviously decide where you want to go, what you want to do with the experience. See what skill set you have at the moment that fits the needs of what you want to do, and try and build upon that. And it may mean, for example, with myself, I mean, I'll be quite honest with you, I never intended to be a global HSE director. It happened over time. I was in the right place at the wrong time, or vice versa. And what actually happened was I moved from a quality assurance background into HSE because my degree was chemistry, and I seemed the most obvious guy to do initially the cost assessments, then the risk assessments, then we combined the quality and HSE roles. And then because I've made a reasonable job of it in the UK, I've got a good relationship with our German site, our main site. And because I spoke a limited amount of German and French, enough to get by, they actually offered me a role as it was originally called European QA coordinator, but more and more that became more involved on the environmental side, particularly implementing 14001. So there are a lot, what I'm saying really is there's a lot of common elements to your safety competencies. There may be other things like, for example, ISO 9000, ISO 14000 auditing skills that make you much more marketable for some of these roles. I don't think you're necessarily going to pitch in straight away into a global role, but I don't think anybody should do that. I think it's a good learning part to gain that intercultural awareness within the likes of Europe or a smaller boundary first, and then develop and expand from there afterwards. Because you do make mistakes, not everything goes smoothly. And I think part of the actual learning experience and dealing with people, developing the softer skills as well as the technical competence is equally as important. So Scott, we can put this as part of your mentoring program, mate, if you want. More than happy to work with you on it. But with 18 years experience, I can see as being a major asset to a lot of companies out there.
There you go. Thanks very much. Okay, I've got one from our team, from Colin Jenkinson.
Oh, that's trouble.
Yeah, wait for it. It's a good question. Okay, so he asks, when setting group standards for a global business, which country legislation and guidance was often your default? Well, that's a good one.
Well, Colin, that's a good question. I think Colin knows some of this. Colin and myself have been good friends for a long time. We, being ourselves, we always tend to think that what we've got right in the health and safety laws in the UK, they are strong, they're very strong, but there's also equally good stuff in OSHA guidance. So what we used to do when we actually developed a standard, as I said to you about, I actually developed a global regional team, and what I would do, I'd have a member from NAFTA, I'd have a member from Europe, somebody from South Asia, from India, from China, and South Americas. We'd all get together. We'd share what we felt with the key estimate. We basically put on the board OSHA, put on the board basically OSHA and obviously UK European requirements, and then I'd ask the people to come along. What were the variations? And I had a good young lady who actually looked after South Africa and India, Zelda Rue, and we'd share what we felt was good, and we had to look at what we needed within the business. Now, that was the first part of the process. So we draft what we thought was our first pass. Then I'd get each of these people to take it to the site level and get them to share what we were trying to achieve and why, not just with the safety people, most importantly with the operations people, with the maintenance people, with the key stakeholders, the key players who are going to make this a success or not. And we'll get them to refine it and come back. Then we tried to rewrite something that would meet the needs of the business. We would try to make a standard no more than 2 pages. And obviously behind that were appendices, checklists, risk assessment, basically frameworks they could use to actually implement it, to assess how well it was being implemented. Then we'd audit the process to make sure, one, it was being implemented the way we wanted it to, on the timescale we wanted it to. It was fully understood. And part of the audit process used to allow us to actually improve these things as well. So it was a dynamic process, but the important thing is getting the buy-in and the trust, which is why they have to be part of that approval process. So we'd start off with those key pieces of legislation. Or if there was one of the team felt they got something particularly strong, for example, on working on height or confined spaces based on their industry or their expectations, then we'd come forward and we'd use that as a basis of what we wanted to develop.
That's great, thanks. Well, I think this says Hugh is amazing. No, it says amazing Hugh, sorry. This is somebody called Olindo Lan or Jan.
He's got to say this gentleman does a lot of fantastic industrial hygiene, occupational health work for me. He's based in Switzerland. He's one of our partners. He's a tremendous guy, but he's done a lot of work for me, not just in Switzerland. He'll be doing work for us in Germany, in Italy, and he's multilingual. And thank you, Olindo. And it's a real pleasure working with you. Yeah.
Okay, he's waving. Okay, here's a question from the chair. This is from Alan. So generally, how would you say health and safety is received by countries outside UK compared to UK perceptions?
I think, Alan, that's a really good question because I think it's changed an awful lot. I think originally there was a reluctance to accept, and it's like most things. I used to love to have a meeting in Germany. When I first went to Germany, They'd ask me so many difficult questions. If we wanted to do something new, change a standard, they'd ask me so many of these tough questions. Now I can say this because my best mate's from Dortmund, and he agrees. And his wife's from South Korea, so you don't get two different poles. If it says do not touch, she'll touch it. It's their culture. So he actually said to me, "Don't think they don't trust you. They're asking the questions, and they're asking lots of questions. And sometimes you come out of a meeting feeling really, really negative because nobody's bought in. But what you'd find when they did buy in, and when they'd actually got all the answers they wanted, the solution they'd come up with would be a Rolls Royce as opposed to a Mini. They would really engineer, being German, the best engineering solution they could give us. So sometimes in the past, when I went to China and developing countries like this, I found there was a slow buy-in, slow progress. So you had to take it slowly. But once they saw some of the benefits, and what I found was particularly pleasing, particularly when we started incentivizing, when I say incentivizing, instead of having just lag indicators, having lead indicators, where people were being rewarded and recognized for good audits, for safety improvement opportunities with permanent actions, people, particularly the Chinese, got very competitive. And because there was a reward at the end of it and recognition, they were very keen to buy in. So I think that helped the process as well. But again, I think it depends where they're starting from. And I think it depends on, again, back to this trust, not just for the local safety people, but the local management team. You've got to sell them the benefits. Because if they don't think the benefits are there, some of these cultures will tell you it's happening and it's not.
That's great, thanks. Okay, good answer. And we've got another one from Elindo, and he's asking, what is, in your opinion, the future of health and safety in the world? Well, that's a big question.
I think the future of health and safety in the world, I think we've all had a big learning experience with COVID. I really do, and I think it's made each and every one of us look at our own personal safety and welfare much stronger. But I think it's also changed the way all businesses. People used to think manufacturing, distribution, driving, deep sea diving were all high risk. So they're built on nuclear, they're all high risk areas, and construction, all high risk. But now the focus has changed. People see the risks day to day in the office through people engagement. So I think, if anything, it's allowed us to move safety up the agenda to a higher level, particularly in terms of personal welfare, but also in terms of company accountability. The amount of work the HSE have been doing to try and get around and ensure workplaces, construction sites, offices are safe, hats off to them. There's not enough of them, I know. It's like most things in this country, under-resourced where you need it, but they've done a tremendous job. And whilst it's not been perfect, our approach with COVID, I'd like to think that through their influence and through the influence of other fellow professionals on this call and elsewhere, the world is becoming a safer place in that way. So let's hope we can use this as a new benchmark to move further on, particularly in things like driving, which to me still remains one of the most fundamental unsafe things you can do.
Yeah, thanks for that, Hugh. Now we have one from Maria Martinez. The question is, this looks interesting. Formula One is one of the best schools, in my experience, she says, to learn and replicate about international health and safety arrangements. What is your opinion about learning from other organizations? Thanks.
Maria, I believe it's absolutely critical. And when I implemented, we should share best practices, and it's so important we learn from each other, irrespective of what the organization is. A good mate of mine from university, you might know, is a guy named Jock Clear. He's one of the chief engineers. He spent a lot of time with Ferrari, and he was a mechanical engineer at university up in Edinburgh at Heriot Wotton. He was also very safety conscious, even in those days. And I think when I actually introduced Safety Breakthrough, we benchmarked ourselves against, we wanted a high risk environment. We were manufacturing, but our people have been hurt and damaged in the steel plants. So we actually benchmarked ourselves against BlueScope. And I spent quite a bit of time working with BlueScope DuPont. I was actually at the BlueScope site in Port Kembla, Australia, because we had our own contract workforce in there. And we used them as a benchmark and shared some of their best practices to develop our own practices. I think it's so important we learn and share from each other, which again is part of the thing I try to do when it comes to us actually mentoring and coaching other people and other professionals. I've learned so much from the people I've got mentoring partnerships with, a number of whom should be on this call, I believe, and I'm still continuing to do so. A lot of the relationship and learning from each other is so important. I think it's being even more so important going forward because the rate of change is so quick. And Andrew, I think people expect more and more, and I think people expect more and more, but people are prepared to give more and more and buy into safety now. So I think the more we can learn from each other, we can fast track better safety practices in all industries, hopefully.
Thanks. Oh, we've got another one from Colin, I think, here. Yep, from Colin Jenkinson. His question is, how did you implement Safety Breakthrough program globally? What lessons did you learn? Would you change if you ran the program again? So,
well, to be honest, your Safety Breakthrough is still actually running within Vesuvius now. It's maintaining, and it's something that they're doing, and they're embedding and reshaping it, so they're delivering it in different shapes. So I'm really proud that the guys who actually I developed now are looking after 4 business unit heads. One of the guys is Chinese, one of the guys is Indian, and one of the guys is, one of the guys that I think I mentioned from NAFTA. So we've got good, strong safety people now owning it. The one thing I think we expected, and we set the bar too high. We implemented the program to begin with in 2009, which is basically a crisis year. I don't know if I know some of these people aren't that old, but the last real crash was in 2009, which really saw a big downturn in the steel industry. Because of the downturn in the production of the steel industry at that time and manufacturing, we had a lot less accidents. So that was a contributory factor. And because we had a lot of time in 2009, we were able to implement a number of standards across the business. 2010, when things were picking up, I think we tried to push too much change through too quickly. So then we had to revisit Safety Breakthrough, and why not back to the Formula One stuff? And we reintroduced it called Turbo S, Turbo Safety, giving it a turbo boost. And what we did there, we actually we realigned and redefined what we did in terms of using risk assessment as the basis for both standardized and non-standardized work, and developing that basically with some form of risk assessment to use to outline one standardized way of doing the things the safest way, the best way for quality. And for non-standard activities, basically just developing a take-two approach. So you did a mini risk assessment before you developed a framework, and trying to move as much of the non-standard across to the standard, auditing it to make sure it's effective, make sure that it's protecting people. But the big learning point I had, and again back to this maturity, is that don't put people under pressure to implement the same things at the same time, because they're starting at different levels of maturity. And that was why we had to sort of take a rethink after 2 years and revisit it and start really building where we'd either not necessarily done damage, but building where we weren't performing the way we wanted to be, because we probably set the bar too high to begin with before we trained the people the way we needed to.
Thanks, Hugh. A few more. This one's from Pat McLaughlin. The question is, did you find ILO C155 useful to demonstrate that you were not pushing the, quotes, European way, but the, quotes, international way?
Yes, we did use the ILO documents, but a lot of the time, I said, when we actually put the standards in, it was specifics. So whilst the ILO was good, some of the risks in our business, being steel industry, things like working with molten metal, working in confined spaces, dust explosion, some of it was much more specific. So we had to go a level of detail much lower than what the ILO could offer us, but some of the good stuff there with the ILO publications, definitely.
Good, thank you. Few people having to leave and saying thank you. Here's one from Victoria Burton. And the question is there anything you can do within your role to combat modern slavery and child exploitation?
To be honest, in my current role, as I said, I'm business development, business services development within Chubb, as well as doing the HSE consultancy. I'm much more going into world-class companies who already have their own modern slavery and child exploitation policies in place. People like Honeywell, people like Colgate-Palmolive, people like Goodyear, people already emphasize and are always focused on this earlier. We did have a very strong focus ourselves within Foseco, within the steel world, on slavery and child exploitation. And I think that was one of the beneficial things. Part of our corporate governance we developed within Foseco from 2004, 2005, and then within Vesuvius, because we formed our own PLC when we divested from Cooks and Chemicals. It's always been areas where the management teams I've worked for have been very committed to make sure we only deal with suppliers who are ethical, who are basically not employing child labour, modern slavery, because we really much are against that, particularly in high-risk environments.
Thanks for that. Just a question of my own then to end on it. What was the strangest thing you came across during your travels?
Oh gosh, strangest thing. Well, I think there's a number of strangest things, different things tickle you. The strangest one I've got to share, really, Well, I was actually out doing some work with a gentleman by the name of Richard Montgomery, who worked for Chilworth for many years, Chilworth Technology. And I learned a lot about explosive atmospheres with him. And we went down to the south of India to the Pondicherry site to have a look at the exothermic sleeves manufactured there. But we also had this site in India in Pune. And we wanted to actually go and do a risk assessment of their coatings plant. Unfortunately, we couldn't get into the coatings plant. What had happened was one of the wild monkeys from the jungle had actually gone into the plant, which is open and very warm, and had taken a liking to the isopropanol alcohol. And having drank its fill of alcohol, became very aggressive, throwing drums, throwing everything. Basically, we were quite fortunate there was nothing that could have caused any real incidents. But we had to leave the monkey in there for a day and a half. It was vicious, and you don't know whether it's carrying rabies or what. Fortunately, one of the security guards told me it was a friendly monkey. So I think what had happened is once the hangover had sort of gone a bit, and he got the munchies, we actually enticed him out. And this is no word of a lie. We enticed him out. We kept a wide bay with bananas, and he sort of wobbled back to the jungle, never to be seen again. But that was definitely one of the strangest things I've ever seen: a drunken monkey in a coating plant.
I would have guessed we get an answer like that.
It's amazing. But to be honest with you, I love India. I love the place. I've been fortunate. I've learned so much of the people with me about their cultures, their customs as well. And and I said to you, there's no wrong way. It's been a real pleasure, and even now I still stay in touch with the team I work with, and the contacts I've made just between flights, and and I really get a lot still out of mentoring and coaching a lot of the people, particularly in the developing places, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, because they are really keen to learn, and I think it's really good.
I've got one more comment to read. Well, a couple really. First of all, from Kieran Delaney, one of our vice presidents who's sitting in at the moment.
Hi, Kieran.
Absolutely loved the presentation. Absolutely loved it. So.
Well, I think we had a tough year, so I wanted to give something a bit light-hearted, but also make the contact. And please, anybody who wants to link up with me after this meeting, please feel free to do so. Share any questions. It's been a real pleasure and honour, and thank you to yourselves, you good people from the East Midlands branch. A lot of respect for you and all the great work you do.
And I'll pass you over back to our chair, Alan. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you. Cheers, Andrew.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. Just fell into the trap of the mute button.
It's usually me.
As I do, as we maybe all do. Right, just a massive thank you, Hugh. It was a really interesting and an enjoyable presentation from my perspective, and I think that can be echoed with a number of questions that was relayed to you. And I'm sure there was a few smiles, there's a few on my face, and one or two bits to take to heart as well, moving forward with that. So really a massive thank you for everything you've done for tonight.
It's a real pleasure.
We'd love to have you back in the future sometime as well, of course.
Again, it's been such a tough year, tough 12 months. I've tried to get out of my way to try and, when I can, lighten heart things. We're all tough professionals in tough environments. It's sometimes nice to put a softer edge on things, because we tend to read the negativity. I thought, what can I do for these great people? I'll try and lighten heart and get them smiling before Friday.
Right. Well, I'll just give you a virtual round of applause there. Thank you, Hugh. It's great, and look forward to working with you again in the future. Okay, but on a note, thank you. Just a quick reminder to the members before you all log off. 8th of July, we have a presentation on Legionella, which is quite relevant, I think, with the move back to the businesses and organisations with the water treatment, etc. And on the 22nd of July, something different altogether, coaching safer behaviours, which should be interesting. So please jog them down. Keep your eyes open for the mailers as a reminder, and would be great to see you again in the future. If I could just ask Brenton and the team, if you just have a 10 minutes debrief once everybody's logged off, please, if that's okay. So thank you, everybody, and thanks again, Hugh.
Thanks a lot, and congratulations, sir. Well deserved.
Oh,
thank you, everybody. It's been an honour.
Thank
you. Thanks, Hugh.
Oh, that was interesting, Colin. That was a good one, mate. Enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
You can stop the recording now, Andrew.
Oh, we're getting there, yeah.